Hello my dear students, welcome back to my channel. Today in this video we are going to learn class 10 English chapter Elixir of Life's question and answers, and yes, this is part 3 of question and answer session. First two parts of the question and answer session video have been uploaded in my channel and the explanation too. So I'll be sharing the links of all the three videos in my description box for your convenience. You can go and have a check. So let's move on to the question and sessions part 3. But before that, students, if you're viewing my video for the first time, do subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get the notification of my latest upcoming videos. To watch the video till end, and if you like it, do hit the like button and share among with friends. So moving on to your question and answers. See students, we had discussed first main, and this is the next main of your textbook. It's named as B point and it's close study. The heading is read the following extracts carefully, discuss in pairs, and then write the answers to the questions given below them. So this is the heading, and here we have one question, one sentence, and we have three sub questions of it, which we'll be learning in detail and seeing the answer. Okay, so moving to the first question, which has three sub questions in it. So the first sentence which has been given here is, much of Indian agriculture depends on seasonal rainfall and is therefore very sensitive to any failure or irregularity of the same. So first, let us understand this. Here he meant to say that much of the Indian agriculture depends on seasonal rainfall. We know India is an agricultural country, and we Indians usually depend on seasonal rainfall. We depend on the rainfall when it occurs, when it will happen, and then we'll have a proper irrigation. And this is one of the drawbacks, and it is therefore very sensitive and delicate irrigation facility to Indians. And it may happen, the failure or the irregularity of the same may have a great damage to the agriculture of India. So this is the sentence mentioned here in this chapter, that India is an agricultural country which depends on seasonal rainfall, and this dependence is very sensitive and it may lead to any failure or irregularity. So this is the sentence given, but the question here is, in what context does the writer say these words? Why has he written this sentence here in this chapter? So we can write the answer here. The writer talks about the soil erosion and the importance of conservation of water. Conservation of water would help agriculture at times of irregular or inadequate rainfall. The techniques of conservation of water would prevent soil erosion, which is of great importance to agriculture. So when he says these things, at that time, this context come here. Like the writer in this chapter says is about the soil erosion and the importance of conservation. If we save water, what will be its importance? How will we be benefited by it? So he talks about this, and he also talks about conservation of water, how it will help the agriculture when we are having irregularity or inadequate rainfall. Means when we don't have heavy rainfall, proper rainfall, sufficient rainfall, or we have less rainfall, so at that time we can use this saved water, the water which is conserved. And he also says that the techniques of conservation of water would also prevent soil erosion. If we use the techniques, the ideas, the plans to conserve and save the water, that would also help us to prevent soil erosion. We'll have double benefit with it. We can also preserve water for us for future use, and even we can preserve the soil erosion, and this is of great importance to agriculture. So while the writer is saying all these things, he is talking about soil erosion and importance of conservation of water. At that time, this sentence has been stated here in the chapter. Okay students, so this is the answer for the first sub question. Now let's move on to the second sub question. What does same refer to? When you read the sentence, you get the word same at the last. See, failure or irregularity of the same. So what does this word same refer to in this phrase, in this sentence? The answer is, same refers to rainfall in India. Means the writer is using that word same for the rainfall. Instead of rainfall, he has used the word there, same. Okay. So that is the answer here. The next question, why is Indian agriculture very sensitive? Why it's so delicate? Why it's so weak, you can say, so delicate and so sensitive? So answer is, since Indian agriculture depends on seasonal rainfall and does not have any other sources of water, it is very sensitive. Okay, because we already know India is an agricultural country, depends on seasonal rainfall, and it does not have any other sources of water. If the rain does not happens in the particular year or a particular season properly, or inadequate rainfall is there, then it becomes very sensitive, very delicate. It may be a great loss to agriculture that year, because we don't have any other sources. So that's why we call it as sensitive. Our agriculture is very sensitive. So this is what the answer, students. Moving on to the next question. They would check soil erosion and conserve the rainfall of the country from flowing away to waste, and would provide the necessary supplies of cheap fuel, and thus render unnecessary the wasteful conversion of farmyard manure into a form of fuel. So now the sentence is given. Based on this, you have three sub questions. So what is mentioned in this sentence? That they would check soil erosion, okay, and they would conserve the rainfall also, means they would control and prevent soil erosion and rainfall of the country from going in waste. If we control it, the soil erosion will not happen and it will not be wasted. And it would also provide necessary supplies to cheap fuel. We can also use it as a fuel, okay, cheapest form of fuel, which is used to burn, which is used to lit the fire, and thus render unnecessary the wasteful conversion of farmyard. So it will also help us not to waste the farmyard manure to make it fuel. If these things are there, now what is this they that will be seeing in the question answer session? What are we talking about here? Okay, they are checking soil erosion, they are checking they are conserving the rainfall, they are helping us to provide necessary supplies of cheap fuel, they are helping in so many way, in so many methods it's helping. So based on this sentence which is given here, we have first question, what does they in the first line refer to? So whom are we they referring to as they? So now this they are nothing but vegetation. Vegetation like shrubs and trees grown in order to check soil erosion. Okay, so now here they would check soil erosion. So this they is no one but vegetation like shrubs and trees. The small shrubs, the plants, the trees which are grown, they are going to check soil erosion, they are going to stop the soil erosion. Because during explanation we have learned, students, that these trees and plants which are grown, the vegetation which are properly done, they help in checking and preventing the soil erosion. They'll also conserve rainfall, will have balanced rainfall, right? So here they is referred to vegetation like shrubs and trees grown in order to check soil erosion. Okay, next question. What is the cheap fuel referred to in the passage? Here you come across the word cheap fuel in the sentence. So what is this cheap fuel? So answer is, it's dried branches and leaves of trees grown to prevent soil erosion. So when you are growing this vegetation, it dries and the leaves falls down. So this can be used as cheap fuel. In village side, students, if you would have been in the village, if you have seen that the dried branches, the leaves, the woods, they use that as a fuel to lit the fire and cook the food, and for many other purposes. So it is a kind of cheap fuel for the farmers. So what is the cheap fuel here referred to? It is nothing but dried branches and leaves of trees which are grown to prevent soil erosion. Okay, students, next question. How could cheap fuel help the farmer? Now, how is this cheap fuel helping the farmer? In what ways? So, answer is, he could preserve the farmyard manure to enrich his farmland. See, in villages, we have seen that farmers also use farmyard manure. Now, what is this farmyard manure? You might have seen farmers using cow dung and dried grasses and mixing it into a manure to make it more fertilized. If they put this dung into the agriculture field, the soil becomes more fertile, it gets the nutrients, and you have a good production and the agriculture there. So it is a farmyard manure. But sometimes what happens in villages, we see the cow dung cakes are made and they are also used to lit the fire. So once we use this cheap fuel is dried branches and trees, leaves of the trees, dried leaves of the trees. If we use this as a fuel, then the farmers can preserve the farmyard manure, and it in turn will enrich his farmland because his land will become more nutrient and more fertilized. So this is how cheap fuel helps the farmer, because it saves their farmyard manure. So you could write in this sentence, he could preserve the farmyard manure to enrich his farmland. I hope this answer is clear, students. Let's move on to the next one. Next, you have the third main paragraph writing type of questions. Herein, you have a heading, discuss in pairs and groups of 4 each and answer the following questions. Note down the important points for each question and then develop the points into one paragraph answers. Okay, so but here directly I have made into a paragraph. You could just cut out each sentence into each simple point in short, how according to your ease, and you can write the points and remember. It's just to remember the points that they have said, you to first note it down and then make it to a paragraph. Okay, so after understanding this answer, you can remember in the form of points also. So let's move on to the first question, students. First question is, how does C.V. Raman show that water is the real elixir of life? So we have seen here that in this chapter, C.V. Raman shows that water is the real elixir of life, real magical substance of life. So how does he proves it? How does he states this in this chapter? So let's see the answer. C.V. Raman shows that water is the real elixir of life. He gives us the example of the Libyan desert where there is no vegetation and not a single living thing visible. On the other hand, in the immediate neighborhood, the Nile Valley is steaming with vegetation and people. Right? We have seen in the explanation of the chapter also, students, that how C.V. Raman has stated that the water is real elixir of life. He also says that he was very surprised and he had a very beautiful view when he was standing in the middle, and towards his one side was a Libyan desert where there was not a single vegetation, not a single grass to be seen, not a single living thing being visible there, because it was totally a desert area, no water to be found. Whereas he said the other side, if he saw it, there was the immediate neighborhood, means just besides it there was a Nile Valley and it was steaming with vegetation and people, means it was blooming with the greenery, with the vegetation, with the trees, with the shrubs, and the people and the animals and the birds residing over there. Why? Just because Nile Valley was there, because the Nile water was flowing from there, which was making the land very fertile, and it was possible to have the good vegetation and sustenance of life and people over there. Then the water of the Nile Valley has made all the difference. Now, how was it possible? It was just because of the water of the Nile Valley, which is flowing from the river Nile. That has made this vast difference, that one side where it's not reaching, it's a desert, and the way from where it's going, it's a good teeming vegetation found there. Then he says water is a wonderful thing and it has shaped and civilized the earth. Okay, because of the water, we have seen through the ages that we have many civilizations flourishing near the water bodies, near the seas, near the lakes. Because there's water, the land is fertile, people do agriculture, and they can have a good sustenance there. They can live the life there. He also highlights that the presence of water makes the countryside beautiful and it has enabled agriculture to thrive. Again, same thing, students, if water is there in the countryside, beautiful rivers, stream, and the flow of water, it makes a scenic beauty. It just adds on to the beauty of that particular area, and it has enabled agriculture again to thrive, to flourish, to improve. Okay, then water enriches the soil and makes it fertile. If water is used judiciously, it can improve our economy by generating electricity as well and provide us with cheap means of internal transport. Then he also says if we use water judicially, means very carefully, as much as it is required and without wasting it, if we use it judicially, we can also improve our economy, our society, our country by generating electricity. Because we know, students, even today our many of the Indian villages are not having proper electricity facilities, so we can generate it if we save the water and use it judiciously. We can use it and we can give all the electricity to the villages and the areas where it's not yet been possible. And it will provide us with a cheap means of internal transport also. If you have small lakes, ponds and rivers, you can use it as an internal transport system also. You can move on from one village, one city to another using that transport. And you know that this is the cheapest means of transport. The water transport is the cheapest means of transport, so it can also add on here. Then he also tells us that water is fundamental for human life and welfare. Means it's very basic thing, it's very important thing, and it's a foundation level. If you, it's a must to every human life and welfare. So it's necessary and it's very important, and thus having so many roles of water, it becomes the real elixir of life, the real magical uh, thing of the life. So this is what the answer. This is how the that Raman has explained and showed us that the water is real elixir of life. I hope you have understood this answer, students. Let's move on to the next one. What are the various causes of soil erosion? How can we prevent it? We have seen in this chapter we are having many causes and reasons for soil erosion. So we'll write the answer and how can we prevent that? Even that we'll mention. So answer is soil erosion is a major problem in India, and there are many reasons and causes of soil erosion, like sudden downpour of heavy rain can result in excess water carrying topsoil into the sea, the slope of the land and the removal of natural protective coat of vegetation, the existence of ruts along which river can flow rapidly, the lack of bunds to prevent water from flowing forcefully. So these are the causes of soil erosion, students. What is soil erosion? First of all, you have already learned the flow of the top layer of the soil, the fertile soil which is there, when it is flown or washed away with the heavy flow of water, heavy downpour of the rain, then what happens, it goes and accumulates in the sea, the all the nutrients, it just washes away in the form of silt and it is accumulated in the sea. And sea water is very salty and it's just wasted, the fertility, the nutrients is just wasted, it cannot be used now. Then the next thing is the slope of the land and the removal of natural protective coat of vegetation. The soil erosion also occurs because we are having the vegetation being grown on the slopy land. The land is not flat, and if the rain happens there, it washes away because you know the water just moves very fastly in the slopy areas. Thus, it removes all the natural protective coat, the upper layer which is there in the vegetation. Then the existence of ruts. Ruts you have already seen in my lab earlier video. I said the meaning that the water when it is flowing through the channels, it makes a way, it makes a channel kind of thing, a small stream, that is known as ruts. The existing ruts and which is flowing along with the river, and it flows very rapidly and again it is very forcefully being flown, so again it carries the silt and the nutrients of the soil, thus it causes to soil erosion. Then one more important reason is the lack of bunds and the dams. We don't have proper bunds and dams where we can prevent water, thus the water keeps on flowing forcefully, and that is the biggest cause of the soil erosion. So these were the causes, students. Now let us see prevention method. How can we prevent it? We can prevent it through terrace cultivation. We should start cultivating small saplings and plants in our terraces. Then you can have contour cultivation. For example, in the mountainous regions, you have very closely, you cultivate tea and coffee plants. So there again, it becomes very strong and it is not easy for the soil to get eroded. So we can do contour cultivation. Then construction of bunds, as is, we just saw now the construction of bunds and dams. If it's constructed, large amount of water can be saved in that. It can be stopped from flowing heavily, and thus it can be helping in controlling the soil erosion. And the last one is the planting of vegetation. Wherever it is needed, the growing of plants and trees, it should be grown, so that the strong roots, it holds the soil strongly and firmly. Then it will be also helpful in preventing the soil erosion. So these are the prevention method. So you can write in this paragraph. You can just keep it in the points also. Keep it in your mind, like heavy rainfall, then slopy lands, then existence of ruts. Like this, you can keep remember in your mind, and you can frame it in a paragraph like this. Moving on to the last question, students. What does C.V. Raman say about rain-fed tanks? When we go through the chapter, we see that C.V. Raman has discussed about and mentioned about the rain-fed tanks. So what does he has to say about it? So answer is, C.V. Raman tells us that rain-fed tanks are common in South India. He says that it's common, it's seen in large number in South India, and he says that are very beautiful when they are full. Means when they are full with water, they looks very beautiful. But he also mentioned that they are not well maintained. They are not taken care of by the people there. He says that these tanks are shallow. It's not too deep, it's just shallow. You can see the end and the base of that tanks. Then he says the water in these tanks is full of silt. It is having the soil suspension and the salty water mixed in it. Salt water, I mean, sorry, soil water mixed in it. So thus it becomes a silty water. So it's not a clear water. The color of the water changes and becomes into brownish or yellowish type of water. Then he says these tanks play an important role in South Indian agriculture. Yes, students, this water which are saved in tanks can be used for agricultural purposes by the farmers. So it's playing an important role, and the farmers use this water for the agriculture, for the irrigation purpose. Then some of them are large and look beautiful when the sun rises and sets over them. Then here the writer also mentions that some of them are very, very large tanks, and it looks so beautiful when the sun rises and sets over them. It has a very beautifying and the mesmerizing scene at that time. So by saying this, he becomes very cheerful, he becomes happy too, as we have learned in the lesson. So here this is what he has to say about rain-fed tanks. So here we come to an question answer sessions of this chapter, students. I hope you'll have understood all the question and answers and it was helpful. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, if you felt it was informative one, do hit the like button. We'll be back soon with more such question and answers videos of the other chapters. Thank you.